Go ahead.
controversial take. That's why the Democratic Party lost, but that's
I guess
exactly
I'll sip
why.
my tea. No, I
That's
mean,
exactly why. If
yeah,
you at that if you are a Democrat, if you are swinging, if you voted for Kamala and everything, if you're gonna be upset about that, please explain why.
those things, like that's one of those things for me personally. It's like, hey, if I don't like you or if you don't like me, cool. Like we could talk smack to each other back and forth, whatever. But like when we see each other, like keep that same energy. Like I'm just like, nah, bro. Like you said what you said, and that's that. Like don't try to act all friendly. Don't try to pretend like, oh, because we go to the same church that oh, we're cool, because you were showing a whole different side on social media, and it's happened a couple times too before.
So
It's like the quote from Star Wars of Obi-Wan when he told Anakin that you became the very thing you swore that you would destroy. Like you became the very
exactly.
pioneers from
Oh,
2016.
screw. I'll say it on here. I'll say it on here.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Breaking Bread podcast. My name is Dan, and this is Ale. And thank you guys so much for joining us here. Man, what a week it has been. The elections is over. The outcome has been nothing but just back and forth all over social media. It's just a lot to keep up with. It's definitely like an emotional roller coaster for everybody, depending on who you voted for or if you didn't vote for anybody. It's definitely just taking a toll on a lot of different people here. And yeah, man, it's just, yeah, we're just here just trying to settle in on the thought and just trying to see what the outcome of the first day is going to look like and everything. So I'm just, yeah, I don't know what else to say, but just you know
When y'all are watching this will be like way past the election week, the election day, just because we're trying to get as many episodes as in we can beforehand.
yeah.
So by the time you hear this, I don't think he'll be sworn in yet, but I do think like it'll be some time in the in between stage.
For
But yeah,
sure,
it's
for
been
sure.
kind of crazy. You feel a little tension going to work. You don't really
Mhm.
know what's going on right now. I live in the cornfield, so predominantly what they're repping. They got their little merch on, their little cute little outfits. But
And yeah, no, go ahead. What were you gonna say?
they're just having a swell time, just wearing their little
Yeah,
uniforms. Like, oh, look at us, we came to play. We're all wearing
yeah,
their
right.
little daddy Donnie some money, somewhere
Oh
little
God, Daddy, Daddy.
anything we little saved
Oh
from
man.
taxes, he would quote unquote cut that.
Yeah.
We're giving that back right back to you with our
Oh
American
man. And how's that been like for you, Ale? Just because for the viewers at home, I currently live in a big city, and like Ale said, he's living in the cornfields, which is just kind of like a small town. But how's like the ambiance and everything going, especially living in a smaller town?
I like that you use ambiance. That you could. I like that. Look at you. Look at
Big
you.
boy words here. Come on now.
um, so I live in Champaign, Urbana. So it's a mixture of like everybody, where you get like people who are more of the far left side,
Mhm.
really hurt and taken back by everything, and then you also have everyone on the far right, where you see just them overjoyed. Like I said, they're proud wearing their little outfits now. So funny to me. It's the funniest thing ever. Just look at me being like a Latino man. A lot of times at work when I see them pass by wearing their fit, they're like staring, wait, like look as if they need a reaction. But then, like,
Mm,
bro, go about your business. I'm not.
yeah.
I'm the wrong one. Why? Why?
No, yeah. No,
Mhm.
yeah, for sure. And like you I don't know, like you also live like on a campus town, right? Where so it's like
Yes.
predominantly like college students, but you also like how you said like it's a mixture of both. So you have college students, but then you also have like elders like living there. And I know this because I also lived in Champaign when I went to school there too.
Hmm.
But
Yep. It's definitely a mix. How about you? Which have you experienced so far?
Honestly, with the way that the elections were going, just for viewers at home, I live in the Chicago city, Chi-town boy here. Uh, I was honestly expecting, well, it was a little bit like a little bit worrisome just because, with the possibilities of like protest, riots, things that were going down, especially back in like 2020 with the whole George Floyd protests, like
January
it,
6th.
and like outcomes like January 6th, and so for me, I was a little bit worried just knowing like what could be the outcome, just because like living in a bigger city, more populated area, a lot more things can just like go down, like things can hit the fan. And so and of course living in Chicago, it is predominantly left, but surprisingly enough during this election, like prior, I did notice a lot of people like repping like Republican as well too, which is very strange because at least within the previous two elections, it was very heavily like Democratic, and it still is. Like Chicago is still very heavily Democratic based, but like this election, like I was driving, like I drive around the city a lot, so I noticed a lot more signs, people with their flags, like repping Trump and everything like that. So it was a little bit of a shocker too, just because I only expected, Democratic, rep and all that stuff. So but
Hmm.
thankfully, everything's good here. There was nothing crazy that went down after the elections, just because I think first and foremost, like people's safety is always just key, despite of the outcomes. But yeah, so but I something that I did notice a lot is social media. Like we mentioned, social media, there's been a lot of outcry. I definitely have a lot of people that I follow who swing both left and right. So it seemed a little bit controversial at times with the way people who swung right, that the way that they were kind of going about posting the post election outcomes and stuff like that. And then of course people are who swing left, of course they were just voicing their opinions, voicing how they felt, and their worries and concerns as well with the outcome.
No, yeah, social media was like it was a war zone. Like in person, it's whatever. But when you're, amongst the keyboard warriors, that's when it gets like crazy. Side note, I also there was this guy on the corner by the Walgreens, by the diner, by the
Mhm,
McDonald's,
mhm, mhm.
waving his Trump flag, crazy, all in his MAGA gear, just there
Post, yeah.
outside today. Funniest thing ever. I'm like, bro, don't you gotta like be at home? Got kids? What are you doing, man?
He's
Funniest
got his
thing
free
ever.
time. I guess that's his free time that he just does that in his free time.
Oh yeah, I
Crazy.
didn't see like as far as social media, like any that many of its changes. Probably because I muted all of them back when Trump went into office, and I'm or no, not even during then. It was during when the Joe Biden versus Trump.
Okay.
That's when I'm like, yeah, y'all are just full of you know what, and 'cause I just didn't. I don't want to see that. I'm like, I
Yeah.
prefer y'all are just reacting off of emotion and just
Yeah.
the passive aggressiveness of it all. You know, I just like, yeah, I'm not here for it. But aside from that, did you post anything on social media, Dan?
So prior to the no, actually it was the day of the election. The only thing that I posted was something along the lines of this applies to both candidates, but each nothing can go into law without it passing through like Congress and the committee group. So, and just kind of like informing people, I'm like, hey, it's important for you to just be educated on these things, because something that I noticed a lot, especially during the campaigns for both sides, it just seemed like things were just being said just to appeal to the group, like, just kind of telling people what they want to hear. And so a lot of it was just kind of like, it's starting to become like a celebrity showdown of like, hey, we'll do this, just so that we can get a positive reaction, rather than actually talking about like policy or, things that politicians would discuss. But it definitely just felt like a celebrity
Mhm.
showdown, which is why I feel like, I don't know, I felt very indifferent about this election overall. But yeah, that was like
Controversial
the only
take.
thing.
Oh, my bad, my bad.
What's up? No, no, go ahead, go ahead.
Controversial take. That's why the Democratic Party lost, but that's
I guess
exactly
I'm sip
why.
my tea. No, I
That's
mean,
exactly why. If
yeah,
you at that if you are a Democrat, if you are swinging, if you voted for Kamala and everything, if you're gonna be upset about that, please explain why or anything. Because all I saw was just Trump campaigning, but liberal, but those woke, quote unquote woke. I don't want to use it in a derogatory way as people do on social media, but advertising that, not who she is as a politician. That's
mhm,
like, what are you doing? You're like, aren't you trying to be different?
yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah, no, that's your 2 cents for the day regarding that. But I mean, was there anything that you like posted like either before, during, or like
yeah.
after the
I
elections?
posted after two things. One of them, it was my first one, was on Instagram. I was like, I can't wait for the next 4 years of just just people saying the nastiest, most heinous things to each other, followed up with a passive aggressive, "Love you, bro.
Mm,
Love you, bro." Can you explain what I mean by that, Dan? I know you. It's weird asking you to explain my
yeah,
post, but you know firsthand more than anybody to
for
what
sure, for
I
sure.
mean. What I,
Yeah, no, and then and of course this definitely just ties back into our podcast talking about like any affiliations with religion or church or stuff like that. So with what he means by the whole like love you bro was typically, especially way back then, when during the 2016 elections, when Ale and I were actually like 15 going into 16 years old, there was a lot of like back and forth within people in our church that felt very indifferent about like each party. And so typically one of the things that we would always see, especially during that election, is that somebody would post something on Facebook and it would just be pages, like paragraphs after paragraphs after paragraphs of like every other person debating or fighting or counteracting each other regarding to like their own like political party and stuff like that. And it always ended in like a passive aggressive, like, oh, love you, bro. Because it's one of those things where it's like, y'all go to the same church together, like y'all serve, y'all volunteer in the same ministry. And of course, when they're like when their differences of like opinions regarding politics came into play, it seemed like, man, these guys are just like two random people that don't know each other. But it was so funny because it's like they knew each other and they would always be with each other like every Sunday service, but then they would show this other side and then end it off with a passive aggressive, like, oh, love you, bro, or God bless you. Like that was always like that passive aggressiveness, like adding salt to the wound. And this is from our point of view as like 16-year-olds. Like some of these guys were people that, were considered leaders, people that we looked up to because we were teenagers. And then we just see this side of them of how they, and they're entitled to their own opinions, but it's just like, whoa, like now we're kind of playing that like church card of like passive aggressiveness. Like, is that like what is that what they're just trying to showcase, especially for guys who are like seeing this, because it was all public, like it was all on social media. So, but that was the explanation of the whole passive aggressive love you or oh God bless till next time type of thing.
But then y'all run up on each other and see each other at church and don't say anything.
Right, right. Like they don't keep the same energy. Like
No, they
that's one
don't.
of those things. Like that's one of those things for me personally. It's like, hey, if I don't like you or if you don't like me, cool. Like we can talk smack to each other back and forth, whatever. But like when we see each other, like keep that same energy. Like I'm just like, nah, bro. Like you said what you said, and that's that. Like don't try to act all friendly. Don't try to pretend like, oh, because we go to the same church that oh, we're cool, because you were showing a whole different side on social media. And it's happened a couple times too before, not regarding to like politics, but like other things regarding to individuals at church, where it was just like this passive aggressive behavior or response, but then pretending like me. I'm just like, nah, bro, like keep that over there. Like I don't need the faked act over here.
Yeah. Like being Christian isn't a shield, isn't a mask for you to be a piece of crap. It's not.
Mhm,
And if you think about, I was telling you this earlier off camera. They were the pioneer, the OG keyboard warriors. If you think about
mhm,
it, because there wasn't any like real social media up until then that was like
mhm,
full on established, like real, like there's documentation, your digital footprint on there. There wasn't any
mhm,
of that cemented until then. So they were really the first ones to be over here. Well, this, and that. You're whatever, calling each other all these things. They're the
mhm,
OG just hiding behind the screen, thinking that there's not going to be any consequences to their actions,
mhm.
not understanding that you're going to see this person in real life. I guess you could give them some leniency because they're the OG pioneers. So like we learn from their mistakes, but at the same time, I'm just like, you're grown.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think like just to kind of even stem off of that a little bit, like the whole like passive aggressive, like, oh, God bless you, or hey, I love you, bro. See you at church next Sunday type of response. Like it's one of those things that like I even noticed even with during this recent election was how a lot of people utilized like God, Jesus, church, the Bible to like mask their political beliefs, like that, like they made that as a response to be like, this person deserves to win because the Bible says so, or you shouldn't vote for that person because they're the antichrist. I'm like, huh? Like, so it was definitely a lot of those things where like, and I've seen this a lot growing up too, not even just about elections, but like since we are on the topic of elections and stuff, like I noticed a lot of people always using biblical scriptures and rephrasing it for their own argument. Like that's something that I always noticed growing up. And it's honestly just so messed up because that's not really what the
Mhm.
root of like what Christianity is supposed to be about. And I think that's why a lot of times people who don't believe in any like Christianity or church, like I feel like that's why they feel the way that they do towards religion or Christianity or church, is because a lot of times when they have questions or when they disagree with something, it always comes off in that passive aggressiveness saying like, no, what you're doing is wrong because you're not following in accordance to what the Bible says. And that's not really what the Bible or Christianity is supposed to be rooted on. But I noticed that a lot of people use that method as a way to like defend themselves, whether if it's for their own personal beliefs or towards politics, since we're on the topic of it.
No, yeah, of course. It's like I'm think for sure, like 90% sure I'm using this verse out of context. But when they say call the Bible a double-edged sword,
Hmm.
like you could use it for good, or you could use it for evil. And like people are using it to just push their own agenda. Maybe they're so brainwashed into their own, nonsense that they want to use it for that. Again,
Hmm.
this doesn't have to just be, we're not just talking about people who vote for Trump. We're not just talking about
Yeah.
that. There's also people who are so like deeply and rooted hated within Christianity that they will use it
Hmm.
for, for their own point, no matter what.
Yeah.
And it's funny hearing that, because then that brings me to the second post I made where I was
Mhm.
trying, I'm like subtly saying, knock all that off. I don't want to hear that. It was
Mhm.
I went on Facebook. Yeah, people still use Facebook, surprisingly.
Mhm.
Um, and I said, can we skip the no matter what happens, God is in control, and don't let politics ruin your friendships posts. I'm like, we get it. You can't think your original thought. And I received a comment under there by someone we went to church with, talking about that, saying that, God is, no matter what, no matter what happens, God is in control. That, like, we shouldn't worry or downplay who God is and stuff. I personally, because they went to our church, so I took it as more of like, a victory lap. Like, yeah, God did his thing. Trump won. Look at that. Blah blah. I took it as that. So I made a nasty response. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna act like I'm above it. No, I got in the dirt in the trenches with all those keyboard pioneers, and I finished it off with "and I love you, bro," which wasn't
Mm.
really with in quotations.
Mm.
And I thought I did my thing. Saying like, I
Mm.
showed him. Look at me. But in fact, I was a complete idiot.
Mm. Mm.
So
It's like the quote from Star Wars of Obi-Wan when he told Anakin, that you became the very thing you swore that you would destroy. Like, you became the very
exactly.
pioneers from
Oh,
2016.
screw. I'll say it on here. I'll say it on here. Side note. Side note. A little side story. I saw your boy refer to the election process as Star Wars.
I mean, I feel like Star
It
Wars has a
depends
lot of.
but it's not in the perspective you're saying it is.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. Just so that people know, like, I always make this joke that, like, oh, that Star Wars has some type of affiliation with, like, politics and religion, whatever, just trying to go down the conspiracy theory, like, hole type of thing. But I guess my boy, implied it in a different way, which I will have to probably look back into that after we finish recording
I'll
this.
tell you off camera. I'm
All
just
right.
laughing because I thought of you. I'm like, that's so funny. That's hilarious. But
Yeah.
no, the response was not even addressed to the point at hand. What we're arguing about was that, he was hurt that I would say "love you, bro" in quotations. And I was like, dang, I messed up. I messed up. I'm not gonna lie, I messed up. So I made sure I apologize under the post, obviously. uh, you know, Making sure that explaining myself, not excusing my behavior, but providing an explanation while
Yeah.
still apologizing to make sure like that's there. And then I reached out, we DM'd back and forth, just talking about it at hand. What he meant, it wasn't that it was a slight to any my post, and I made sure I'm not like, it wasn't a direct, it was not a anti Jesus, anti God, anti church type post either. So we just like made sure we cleared the air. Again, I apologize to them. That's not cool. That's not. I wasn't cool of me. That's not what a person should do to another person.
Mhm.
Just as I saw that and experienced that firsthand, doesn't mean it gives me the right to do the same to others.
For sure. No, no, yeah, that's a good point of just kind of understanding from your own mistakes, especially because how you said we saw that growing up and thinking that, oh, like, we could also do it and execute it, but not understanding the outcome of it. And just to kind of even branch off of what we were saying of like the post and like what we've been seeing from what we saw from people back then and now, like I noticed something I even noticed like during this election is that there was some type of like, in my personal opinion again, I noticed some type of like influence, especially when it came to like Christianity, like, leaning towards the right side, at least from, my social media page,
Yeah,
from
yeah, yeah.
people
I
that I
mean,
talk to.
historically, that's how it's been. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, like
like,
the United States
recent
has been
history, not.
rooted,
Mhm.
yeah, like United States has been rooted into like Christian morals, et cetera, like its history. And
Mhm.
so something that like even during like for example watching both like Kamala's and Trump's campaigns, like something that I noticed even towards Trump's campaigns was like there were some like a couple phrases or sayings of like the Bible or like God was doing this, and like I that's his own opinion, that's his own thought, but I just kind of like wonder, like, because there's this saying of how like there should be a division or a separation of church and the state, but I noticed that there's been like a lot of influence when it comes to like Christianity, religion, church towards a specific political party. And so my question to you, Ale, is like, what would you think if the United States government enforced like Christianity as a national religion?
Well, there's a lot of people who already feel like that's the case. When you are sworn into office, the president puts his hand on the Bible.
Mhm.
When you're about to testify in court, you put your hand on the Bible, swearing that you're not going to lie or anything like that. So it already has, I would say, it's big influence on, but in terms of a national overview, I feel like a lot of our people feel like that may come because of the outcome, but it'd be, I would personally not be, I would be opposed to it. I would definitely be opposed to it. I would not be for it because when you think about that means you're taking away other people's rights to vote, other people's rights to practice their religion. It goes against what this country stands for. When you look back historically, when they say they came over here for to flee from religious persecution, when and Christ, when we sat in church before, we hear about, oh, there's Christians out in X, Y, and Z place that are being beheaded, that are being this. I felt like we heard it every other youth
Yeah.
service. And so I'm like, why would we fall into that? Why would we do the same? Everyone should have
Yeah.
their rights, even if we don't believe in them. But we can't take that away.
Yeah. For sure, absolutely. And just to even just kind of expand on that a little bit more of like the influence of church in regards to like political parties. So I found a study here from the Pew Research Center, which is a nonpartisan, non-advocacy organization that conducts polls and studies on various topics, one of them being politics. They conducted a study back in September 9th of 2024, which was 2 months before the elections. Uh, and they had a study in regards to different religious groups and who would they vote for. And so here it was pretty much like in total, it was like 49% for Republican and Democrat. And so, but here they kind of broke it down where uh, Protestant Christian voters or any like Christian voter outside of just being Protestant, like it resulted that it was 61% that would vote for Republican and 37% that would vote for Democrat. And that's in total of like, individuals that are white voters, black voters, as well as Hispanic voters. But then when you look at Catholic voters, it was 52% that would vote for Republican and 47% that would vote for Democrat. And then for Jewish voters, it was 34% that would vote Republican, and it would be 65% that would vote for Democrat. And then, of course, for unaffiliated religions voters, it was 28% that would vote for Republican and 68% that would vote for Democrat. So I definitely see there being a huge influence, especially when it comes to um, you know, people who identify as Christian or Catholics, as the studies state. And so for me, of course, like I'm how you said, Ale, you would be opposed to it, but let me just play devil's advocate here just for the viewers. to know, that I don't fully agree with a lot of the things that I'm going to say, but for the purpose of, a good
I
conversation,
said I'm questioning now. You saying fully. I'm like, I hope some of them it ain't too
we'll
out
see.
too
We'll see. We'll see what
outlandish.
we
Okay,
discuss.
go ahead. Go
Like I
ahead.
won't discredit. There might be some things along the lines that I discussed that might be from my own personal opinions, but of course, like just for the sake of having a good conversation,
Yeah, yeah,
I'll
yeah.
play devil's advocate to how you said that you oppose there being an influence of some type of church or religious affiliation to influence the U.S. government to make decisions on the nation. But I think again, if they're like, if we were to live in a society in a nation that was fully governed by, let's say, Christianity or Catholicism, I definitely think that things would very much drastically change and shift just for the simple fact that there's a lot of laws and policies placed now that don't align with Christian or Catholic morals, especially if we want to stem it back to the Bible. And when we look at other countries that are very heavily influenced based off their religious practices that govern their country, we also see how things are very different for them. Where to us, we may not very much like fully agree with, but there might be some things that might work out for them that may not work out for us.
But yeah, I don't agree with needing to have a national religion. I feel like once you take away rights from other people to practice their religion, there's no telling what you could take away from anybody else. Like if I one day you're not going to be able to worship God at all if you don't agree with something, someone's interpretation of the Bible, what would happen then? It opens so many doors that why would you bother even doing that?
Yeah. No, for sure. And especially because of a country that, we're a democracy, we have a lot of, I guess in my own words, like we have a lot of flexibility to do a lot more things compared to like other countries. I think the one thing that really does just kind of like intrigue me is how there are so many other countries that really, solely base their government on religious practices and stuff like that. And so, and of course, like I did do a little bit of research myself
Do your
from
research.
exactly, do your research. So yeah, so I did pick up this research article from the Pew Research Center, which we will put down in the link below if you're interested to look into it. But it's pretty much just further studies regarding the whole world and each country's based off of how they govern their country based off of religious affiliations or influence. And of course, like according to study, there are 43 countries within the nation that solely, govern their country based off of what they believe in. And there's only 40 countries in the world that have some type of favor of like, okay, this is what we believe in. We'll pick up a couple different things here that we do believe in to just kind of make our decisions. But of course, the United States, we have no official or preferred religious affiliation when it comes to making decisions based off of like political beliefs and stuff like that and policies. And so for me, like I don't know, it just kind of like I said, it kind of intrigues me a little bit because there's so many other countries in the world, especially in the Middle East, that believe in Islamic practices that have that's solely like the root of like how they run their country. And at least to my understanding, I'm not fully educated in a lot of different things of how other countries are ran and how they're doing, but I know, especially towards like the Middle East, there are a lot more like concrete rules that in the US, it's just kind of like we are a little, like I said, we're a little bit more flexible when it comes to that. But I don't know, like like to us, like looking at it from the outside in, we would just automatically think like, man, like that's horrible. Like we disagree with what certain countries are doing, how they run certain things, especially from conversations that I've had with other people in the past that have expressed their differences about like how other countries are ran and stuff like that. But I don't know. To me, I always just try to like look at things from the other lens and see like, you know what, like maybe there is something that is kind of working out for them that we may not be seeing, you know. And for me, like it's just one of those things where I'm like, I'm not going to completely dismiss what they believe in or how they're running things unless if it's completely like horrible, like if it's genocide or if it's like a tyrant dictator ran country, then okay, like I'm obviously not gonna like I'm not gonna agree with what you're doing. But for the other countries that just run things a little bit more differently than we do here in the US, like there's probably some things that work out for them that we may not see or know or understand, but to them it's like, hey, like this is what's really working for us and we're rolling with it for all these years.
I would say, like, I don't know. I'm not well educated on that either. So there's a lot of it I just won't speak on because I don't know. I'm not gonna sound like an idiot,
Hmm.
but I just don't. I know you're just playing devil's advocate, but to me, it's like if we were to just one day switch to Christianity and just have that be our overarching religion, it wouldn't go. I don't think there's too many benefits to that happening for
Hmm.
our nation. There's so much. We're such like a freedom based religion. You got the bald eagle with the American flag, all buff with the shirt open, two giant guns. You know, like it just doesn't. It can't. I just don't see it working out. What would you think?
You know, looking back on it, and of course, just going if we're continuing based off of the hypothetical scenario, if the U.S. was governed by Christian roots, I think to some extent, like how I mentioned earlier in the conversation, how we saw people on social media then and even now using the Bible, using church, using Christianity, or any, well, I don't want to speak for other religions, but at least for Christianity, how they use that to gloss over what they believe in. I think to some extent now looking at it, if if this nation was ran by Christian roots and practices, I think it would be like same but different, but like it would be in that way too, where it's like the Bible says, you know, this and now we have to like now they're going to be able to like restructure it in a way where it's going to benefit them. And so that to me, like that's the only part that I feel like I would oppose is like, okay, if you know, if they were to run this nation based off of Christian practices, beliefs, and morals, I can very much see that happening where it's like they're taking things out of context and they're using it to take advantage of other people. And of course, one of the big topics at hand is abortion. You know, like that's one of those things that really led this election that, you know, some people really believed in abortion, others opposed it. And so I think that, you know, in the same way of, you know, what the Bible says about abortion, you know, I think in that aspect, people could use that and just kind of like abuse of the to be able to abuse, you know, what the scripture is saying rather than like keeping to what the principles of Christianity is actually supposed to be, like I mentioned earlier.
Of course, yeah. Picking back off of abortion, it's like there's so many aspects that come into such a procedure that are more than just faith based, it's science based as well. I've seen a lot of people argue, but again, though about what's right or wrong for it. But me personally, like none of y'all are health experts. None of y'all are really, basing this off of an actual, let's say a pediatrician or a doctor, so just an expert in that field. I've been trying to look for the word, but that's really just what I'm getting at.
Mhm.
So I'm like, I don't want someone who's not an expert in that field to determine that based on what X, Y, and Z, what someone's faith may be. Because again, there's so many abortion, let alone there's so many reasons as to why. It's not just, this might offend a bunch of people, but I really don't care. It's not just, ooh, I want to murder a baby. I want to kill a baby. There's so much implications that go into that. And I know you've like seen firsthand with your job when like, well, you should just place them for adoption. Like where it doesn't even go that like there's so many like kids at risk and everything. And aside from that, some of it has to do with medical purposes for the mom. I know I'm getting on a little sidetracked here with the rant, but all this just to say like there's there's so much that we don't know, so many questions that we could have, and then
Mhm.
people just want to do your research and go to someone who's going to be biased towards their opinion rather than an expert on the subject in itself,
Yeah.
regardless of which way they're swaying.
Exactly. No, 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 and that's a good
Mhm.
point, like, even just kind of elaborating a little bit on the topic of abortion, just because, like, I know for a lot of Christians, they, oppose, abortion, because again, like I said, what the Bible says about it, and just even going off of that a little bit more, like, I know from my personal opinions and thoughts, like you said, like, there's different reasonings now compared to like when the Bible was first written, like compared to like 2000 years later, like there's times have changed, times are different now. It's the same way like how people have their thoughts about like the Constitution, like that was written so many years ago that people and the nation still tries to keep rooted to it. But again, like the times were different of when it was written then compared to like where would we be at as a society and as a country now. So that's another thing to like even take into consideration as well too, is just like I know people are very hardcore extremists that like stick root like word for word verbatim of what the Bible or what the Constitution says, but it's just understanding like, hey, times are different. Like there's different situations. We're in a different economic state, societal like circumstances, obstacles, like everything that's going on around, like it's changed. Like I don't think back then when the Bible and when the Constitution were written, I don't think that they would have ever thought of like the advanced technology that we were going to have today, and who's to say like some of the laws and policies that we have now, like how that's going to look like 100 years from now, like we don't know how that's going to impact society in the future. So yeah, like it's just one of those things to really like take into consideration and look all around because yeah, we just can't be one-sided. Like I'm very open-minded and I like to hear like all sides of the story or all sides of
Mhm.
opinions and thoughts before like drawing to my own conclusion.
I think that's what's like so hard about how you said going back when you were playing devil's advocate about all right, let's say we stick with the Bible, made that be our law, but then like people to manipulate it, people to change it, things happen.
Yeah.
But then it's like, all right, no matter even now we're still putting our lives in the hands of things that were written years ago that didn't anticipate such a big change. Not even just like biblically as well. Like there's so many advancements, things that happen that aren't really anticipated. Some may argue other for the Bible that yeah, it was because it's the God, it's the all being, all knowing power. But it's crazy when you think about that. Like things change and we should be able to adapt and learn more. But it sort of feels like with all this information, we're kind of like going in reverse.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's a good point to even bring just because it's just one of those things where again, especially nowadays with, social media, the news outlets, who's to say that, there might be some things that are being twisted or misinterpreted or just, worded differently and oh wow, like that's the first thing that we're going to believe in. And I don't know for me personally, like the way of how things are, especially with social media and all that, like how like even not even just social media and the news outlets, but like even some pastors too, like the way of how they are coming across of like, this is what the Bible says, this is what the Bible. this is what you should do, this and that. And for myself, and I'm sure for you too, Olive, for the amount of different like pastors that we like grew up like hearing, or like that would come to visit, or in our own personal time that we would see on like YouTube, like they all have different viewpoints. Like they all have different perspectives of like how they perceive the Bible, and how, Christians or should walk, and how you should go about your faith. Like there's never one answer that's like this is how it is. Like if you see, even for Christians, there's so many different pastors that can preach the same verse but interpret it in so many different ways. And so that's the thing where like in that same aspect, in that same format, that could also, who's to say that could also be used in the same way with media outlets and social media and stuff like that. And so it's definitely like mind-boggling with just kind of processing like, okay, well, what's the right thing? Like who should I listen to and stuff like that.
Hmm. That brings me back to like our not back, but to our final topic of like who to listen to. It's like who should you keep around as well? Are you gonna
Mhm.
predominantly be around like-minded people, someone who's gonna have the same thoughts as you and not challenge what you believe, or do you have like the opposing side as well? And just how that factors into your everyday life. Can you have like, is it even possible to be friends with someone who doesn't share those same values with you?
Mm.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, again, in my own opinion, I'm definitely the type of person that, I'm open-minded. Even if what I believe in, what I grew up knowing, it may not align with other people that I affiliate with, other people that I am friends with. It may not correlate with what they believe in, but and to some extent, like I know that there's like a respectful boundary, at least I like on my end. Like I know, like, hey, I'm open to hear what you got to say, what you believe in, what your thoughts on are on X, Y, and Z. But if as long as we can keep like some mutual respect of like, hey, if we disagree on things, you know,
Mhm,
that's just one of those things that we just kind of go from there. But it all just varies on like the topics and conversations too. Because if someone were to tell me that like yes, like genocide should be the final answer to everything, then I'm gonna be like, hold on, man, like you're kind of tooting your own horn, or you're biting off a lab right now. Like you're kind of bold with saying what you're saying, but like with personal beliefs, personal differences, personal perspectives and viewpoints, like that's just me. Like what may work for me may not work for other people. Like I know other people are a little bit more, maybe a little bit more reserved to like only keeping people that believe in the same things that they do, that only practice what they do,
mhm.
et cetera, et cetera. So
In their defense, speaking for their side, it's a lot easier. It makes more sense because, in the Bible, it talks about being around those who are equally yoked. I know the cop out people go for. No offense, 'cause I think you'll probably follow up with that as well about
mhm,
like Jesus, how he hung out with the sinners, this, and that. But the Bible is pretty clear on like you gotta be locked in with those who are aligned with your walk. So I
mhm,
think that applies for everybody. Like, don't get me wrong, you should be able to peek behind the curtain. I mean, be able to look and have those conversations, be comfortable with someone challenging your idea. But at the same time, it's easier said than done.
yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. And it's like that saying goes, like you tell me who your friends are, your five friends are now, and I'll tell you where you'll be at in 5 years. Like it's one of those things of like, it is a crucial thing of like, yes, like these are the people that I want to keep close in my circle of like, yes, like the people that think the same or similar as I do, that believe in the same thing as I do, or have the same goals, ambitions, whatever. Like those are the people that you want to keep like really close in your circle. But there's also like those people that you can affiliate yourself with that may not agree with what you do or what you believe in. Like you can still have them in like your exterior circle, but they're not the ones that are like really
Mhm.
in your like circle. But yeah, I definitely do see like how that applies to so many people, even if they're non-believers. Like it's just kind of keeping those people closest to you in your circle. Like I see how that's very much applicable to
Mhm.
everybody's lives.
Like I got like two last points to make about it. Like the first one would be it's a lot easier said than done. It's a lot easier to be like, yeah, I want to keep, be open minded to everyone, but you just can't make everyone happy, and that's not how you
Mhm.
should live. And I will say a lot of people try to villainize people like just delete me and block me if you want to see that don't want to, if you voted for so and so or this and that. And I'm like, in a way, I kind of get it. Why would you waste your time? Like, you don't want to be around those kind of people. We got one life to live. Why would you want to be around them? I get you don't want to be look like a bad guy. You don't want to look like a villain, but at a certain point, we're all villains. We're all bad guys in someone's life, and that's just the way the cookie crumbles.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, and just for my final thoughts as well too, like I think, there's so many perspectives or so many things that can be misleading as well, and it's very difficult to just kind of follow one thing, especially for people who have bad experiences, whether if it's with some type of church, political group, or individuals in their lives. It's just very much one of those things that just understanding your own boundaries, seeing what works for you, seeing like what are some beliefs, what are some morals that align with you and help you on a daily. And like you said, Ale, sometimes you might be perceived as a villain in somebody else's eyes because of how you live your life, but realistically, it's you're not living for them. They're not paying for they're not paying for your bills nor your tuition. It's just kind of like, okay, like I'm gonna do me type of mentality, like I'm gonna do me, I'm gonna do what works best for me, and that's that.
As the great Spider-Man said, "Nah, I'm gonna do my own thing." Well, yeah, there you have it. We got one life to live. Me and Daniel hopefully provided some, helpful conversations to have with those around you, yourself. Don't base your opinions on just what we're saying. As another great person said, we are not your savior. You know, I'm probably just sounding arrogant. You probably don't even think that, let's be real now. But
All
yeah,
right.
thank you so much for watching. We got more to come for the Breaking Bread podcast. See ya.